Okay, Ed, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Very great to be coming down.
Roger, bottom step.
The last one is a long one. Ascent check, very easy to do. Little push and just spring right up.
Well, hello and welcome to the Powerhouse's Apollo 12 Speakers Series. My name is Chris Cable. Doctors Maryboy and Begay founded the Indigenous Education Institute and are its founding president and vice president. Nancy also serves currently as executive director. Nancy and David created the Indigenous Education Institute, which we refer to as IEI, in 1995 as a nonprofit institution with a mission to preserve, protect, and apply traditional Indigenous knowledge of Indigenous peoples from around the world. IEI has developed numerous projects that preserve traditional knowledge, protect the knowledge in terms of Indigenous protocol, and apply it to such areas as astronomy and other science disciplines. Their work is centered on the task of helping young Native people find their own sense of self-identity and self-esteem in the world today, based on a firm foundation of thousands of years of cultural knowledge. They work with many scientific organizations and institutions, such as the National Science Foundation, NASA, and with numerous science centers and cultural museums around the world, including the Powerhouse. So without further ado, please help me welcome Doctors Maryboy and Begay.
Thank you for that introduction. I want to greet you by my traditional language. Ya'ate, ya refers to the universe. Ate refers to the existence of the universe. And here it acknowledges the human participant in this universe, that we are a mere participant of a much bigger universe. So you acknowledge our place in this universe according to the traditional people, my elders that I talked to and what they taught me. I want to greet you with that and let Nancy continue.
Thank you, David. Good evening, everybody. I'm Nancy Maryboy, and it's a great pleasure. I'm Navajo and Cherokee, and so tonight we'll be talking about Navajo astronomy that we've studied for many, many years, and try to give you a perspective of what it looks through Native eyes. We're all looking at the same sky, but we're all perceiving it in a different way. So we hope you'll have fun learning something about the Native perception of the same stars that we're all looking at. I'm going to read you a quote. The Dene, which is the Navajo word for Navajo, the Dene Navajo word for star, Sitsui Yo, refers to my ancient relation from where I came. When we look at the Milky Way galaxy at night, we are actually looking at ourselves.
There's a lot that was said in that text. My ancient relation. It's Tsuyo, the word, my ancient relation from which I came. That's how we say star. They tell us that we come from the stars. They say that beginning of time goes back into the universe. It's all energy and light. And that's where all life emerged. Everything on earth, everything everywhere else came from that place. And human is no different. They're an integral part of this process. Astrophysicists, they say the same thing. They say that we are made out of stardust. The cosmos is within us. The universe is within us. Whenever you look at the star, it could be any constellation, you're really looking at yourself from which you came.
This is a Navajo Hogan with a blanket on the door, a star quilt. This sky has been enhanced with the help of a colleague of ours at NASA. The shape of the Hogan, this is more of the northern Navajo kind of Hogan. That dome shape is reflective of how the sky looks when you're standing on the ground looking up to the sky. It's like a great big dome. And all kinds of different knowledge systems are built into the Hogan. This is a friend of ours, part of a staff at the Star School on the Navajo Nation. And we had these t-shirts made up of the Navajo universe. The students had them, the staff had them, and it became a really interesting activity where you were wearing your curriculum. So students would go around and they'd point at an item on that diagram, and that's how they learned their constellations, just milling around with each other and seeing where the different constellations were in the sky. There's some other things that are really important about Navajo astronomy, and it's based on a worldview where all things are living and all things are interrelated. And this is between person to animals, person to birds, person to the sun. You're related to the sun, you're related to the moon, you're related to the stars, like David was just explaining. Everything is interrelated. And that means that you have to take into consideration things like, if you have an action, you have to consider it. How will it affect like 7 generations on from here? So that affecting is built into relationships. And so you have to be very respectful of land and animals and birds and plants and how they will be able to continue on generation after generation. Another thing that's built into Navajo astronomy is it's dynamic. Everything is always moving, and this is deeply embedded in the Navajo language. This feeling of motion, process is very important. Cosmic is important. This is a huge thing we're talking about. We're talking about the whole universe. And order, the fact that there is an order in place that we can learn to live from. So dynamic cosmic order becomes 3 words, but they mean a whole lot. You might wonder how we acquire ancient star knowledge. This knowledge is really old. It goes back thousands of years. We went straight to our elders and heard their stories and learned from them. And traditional practitioners, medicine people, they hold a lot of this knowledge. Animals, we learn from the animals, we learn from the birds, we learn from the plants, and these are all interwoven into different constellations, as a matter of fact. We did a lot of our observation outdoors year-round, and we did know that most of the important events in the sky happen just before dawn. So that means if you're going to be learning something, you've got to get up very early and get out there. And so we have years and years of observations, particularly to the east, the heliacal rise, they call it, as the sun, just before the sun comes up. What star is there? And what does that mean? We used some ancient star maps that we found, and we had to translate them into Navajo and into the old Navajo. So it was a long process, but we learned tremendous cycles and positions from the star maps. We learned from ceremonial songs, from the language, and we learned a lot from computer technology. So many, many different ways to acquire knowledge. One of the things we do is make it available to students, especially Navajo students, so they can be really proud of this extensive knowledge that their elders have learned to live from.
Yeah, what we have drawn here is a Navajo Worldview, and on the right is the Mayan Worldview. And here on the left side, we have our own constellation and how the Navajo land was thought about traditionally, a long time ago. So if you were to peek into the mind of a very traditional man, a very old cultural man, this is probably what you would see. There's a certain way of looking at the world, and there's an organization, meaning there's order. There's a tremendous order in this universe. That order provides the structure and the organization of the mind, how the mind should be structured in accordance with the natural cosmic cycle. So they try to live with that order as much as possible. On the left side, there's a E on the other side of this Hogan in the middle. That's east, and then to the right is the south, then the west, and then the north. There's four sacred mountains that Navajos recognize as their border. And on the north side is the Mount Hespers, right there by Durango. And then on the east is Mount Blanca in southern Colorado too. In the south is Mount Taylor by Albuquerque, and the west side is by Flagstaff, San Francisco Peak. And so here it's depicted like a human figure, but actually these colors, like the white color, it's a depiction of the dawn. And then the turquoise is depiction of the midday. The yellow is evening twilight. The black one is night. And in the Navajo worldview, there's 12 main constellations that serves like a backbone. And there's a number of what I call secondary constellation. And so if you have this in your mind, you can have an organization to talk from. What we just shown is there's another way of looking at the worldview. Here on the left side is what is in the sky. And then on the right side is the earth and how they interconnect. In the Navajo worldview, there's only one universe, and the earth is a part of this universe. Around the third week in January, the Milky Way will encircle the earth. So when you look to the east, the south, the west, and the north, you will see the whole of the Milky Way. It's circle. The Navajo traditional people, they seen that. So they talk about the Milky Way actually being circle. And the rest of the year, you just see part of it. And depending on what time of the night, you just see part of it. But it's really circle. And so it's at that time, they say, just when the Milky Way encircles the earth, the people, the eagles will lay their eggs. About 1 month later, those eggs will hatch. And so, according to Navajo, they say that the third week in January, that's when the new year starts, not January 1st. And so it's based on the eagle laying the nest and then also the Milky Way as it appears over the horizon. Here is an illustration of the universe that we've been talking about. Like I was saying earlier, there's 12 main constellations. Right at the center of this circle is the North Star. And right underneath that center, right on the bottom, there's a man. They call it Nahokos, male revolving one. And then on top of that central fire, that center, there's a female there. They call it female revolving one. And so these two constellations, they go around the fire throughout the night. They never go anywhere. You always see these constellations as a group, and they stay in one place.
Another constellation we wanted to mention, because most cultures all around the world have different stories about the Pleiades. Navajo is no exception. So in Navajo, there are several stories, but this particular painting depicts little boys that are playing a game, and they're followed by a woman with a buckskin over her shoulders. And so when they go over a hill and you don't see them anymore, that reflects what's happening here on Earth. When in May, they're visible, then they're not visible, and then they become visible again. And it's the time when they're not visible is that people would know to plant corn a long time ago.
Okay, what we have here on the left side is a man with a bow and arrow. And around where his belt would be, there's 3 stars. In Greek, the 3 stars are referred to as the belt of Orion. And here, it's thought of as a warrior. in Navajo. And on the right side is a nebula. And this looks like a horse. And from this picture, it appears not too big. But they say that if you were to measure this from one side to the other side, let's just say, the horse head, that's right there, it's billions of miles. So this is hydrogen, gas, helium, and tremendous activities going on.
Well, David and I, we contract with NASA, and we work with bringing NASA activities and NASA knowledge into different schools. We've been told to really concentrate on heliophysics for the next 5 years. Helio means the sun, so we couldn't leave you without saying a few things about the Navajo sun. Johana is the Navajo word for sun, and it's depicted as a man on a horse carrying the sun. And the horns have everything with power, so they have very, very powerful, and they have feathers, which is a connection of your spiritual essence to the whole universe. And carrying on this with what we're working with in NASA right now, there's a really beautiful Navajo story about two twins, and they call them in English the hero twins. That's Monster Slayer and Born for Water. They go to the sun, who's their father, who they've never met, and they ask for certain weapons that they can bring back to Earth to make life on Earth safer and get rid of the monsters that are killing people. And so the other day we were in a training session that NASA put on, and the lady that was one of the chief scientists of the solar orbiter was on there. And when she heard us talking about these hero twin stories, she got really excited, and she said, well, gosh, that's kind of like the two missions going to the sun. And we thought about it a long time. We said, that's really true. So the slide on the right is the sun. And there's two missions coming from the United States that are out there now. One is going around the sun, that's the solar orbiter, and one is going into the sun, that's the Parker probe. And you can imagine how hot the sun is, and why isn't it going to melt the minute it gets within 100,000 miles of the sun? Well, it's been really amazingly built so that the Parker probe, the beginning, the front part that goes directly into the sun is so well insulated, it doesn't burn up. And in the back of that, it's as cool as a classroom. Can you imagine that scientists were able to develop something like that? Then the solar orbiter goes around the sun, and it's really interested in studying the coronal mass ejections, which you see are these little spurts coming around the edge of the sun. So we're very interested in making these connections, because when you think about it, the sun can be very helpful to Earth, or it can be really deadly to Earth. And so that's two missions that are going to the sun that are going to come back with knowledge that will help us, have a safer life here on Earth. So anyway, that's research in that's happening right now.
Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff with Apollo 14. 3 minutes past the hour. The tower is clear.
Houston is controlling. Good thrust now. 16 seconds. Pitch and roll program started. 14 maneuvering to a proper flight course.